Hey everyone, today I'm going to give you some tips on how you can make money in IT. But before we do that, if you're interested in all things cloud, or whether they're technical, whether they're fun, or whether you're just interested to see the life of a cloud consultant, be sure to subscribe, leave some comments below, and let me know what you think. So, the past 10 years have been a bit of a challenge. And to say they're a bit of a challenge is an understatement. There's been times I wanted to leave the industry. There's been times that I wanted to smash my keyboard through my monitor. We've had all sorts of scenarios come up where I just think to myself, this is not the industry for me. For a long time, I felt like IT was just a job to get by, and I really belonged in another industry. It wasn't until I really got my first role as a third level engineer where I was like, okay, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life or for the foreseeable future. I felt like it was really the right job for me to get into IT only when I landed in that role. So before that, it always felt a bit funny to me that I was sort of doing other things on the side, like whether we would be working on cars or trying to sell car parts or getting into lots of other little hobbies and trying to make money out of that, while I was also working a day job in IT. It just felt like the IT role wasn't really consuming me. Although when I was a child, I really loved IT and I really saw that my future would be in IT, it just felt like it wasn't going in the right direction for me. And that was when I was in level 1 and level 2 roles, where most of the day you're doing things like password resets and fixing people's machines and fixing printers and all sorts of those things. So as I said, it wasn't really till I got into a level 3 role where I sort of went, you know what, I like IT, and I noticed one thing, that I stopped actually watching the time. So I realized that when I got into that third level role, I stopped looking at the clock so much. I stopped looking at how many hours I have left of the day or how many tickets are in the queue. I was just consumed in the work and I was enjoying, and I was getting fulfillment out of my day. And that is sort of when I went, you know what, I think there is something in here for me. So although my background was all IT related, and you can click on the tile above that I'll leave, which is a video of my different roles in the IT field, I just feel like I never really hit that sweet spot until I landed my first role as a third level engineer. Anyway, enough about that. I've got another video, like I mentioned, that goes through my IT background if you're interested in that. Today, I'm actually going to give you some tips, 8 tips in fact, that are going to help you make money on IT and how to further your career so that you get more financial fulfillment and more daily fulfillment in your role as an engineer or as an IT professional. So these 8 tips that I'm going to give you are the principles that I applied in my career that helped me climb from a service desk analyst in 2009 to now a principal cloud consultant and also running my own team and my own business. So let's get straight into it. Number 1, do not stop learning. Continue to get your certifications. Continue to learn all the tech stacks you're interested in. Just because you started in something, so just because you started in VMware or just because you started in Microsoft Azure or Microsoft 365 doesn't mean that you have to keep doing that. It's all experience at the end of the day, and many engineers will let you know, many engineers will tell you that the experience you learn is something that you move into or you take with you into any role, so any tech stack as well. That applies, so if you know virtual machines in VMware, then you can probably apply a lot of the principles in Microsoft Azure, for example. So keep learning that new tech that comes out. A lot of the time I hear people in IT talk about they have to study and do too many certifications and blah, blah, blah. Well, that's just the life. If you're interested and you get fulfillment from that role, then that's what you need to do. You need to keep learning, you need to keep getting your certifications. My second tip is to experiment. So one thing that I see in IT is when young people come on board, including myself when I came on board, the ones that are truly hobbyists, the ones that really are interested in IT and do IT on the weekends, and they sort of play games and build their own computers and experiment building labs, experiment with new tech stacks, have evaluation license of VMware, have a $200 free credit a month in Azure. Those are the people that I see moving up the ranks very quickly because they're the ones that are self-learning, but they're not doing it just for their job or just for a career move or just to make more money. They're doing it because they actually have genuine interest in the tech stack. So experiment, build VMware labs, build Azure labs, build that other one, AWS labs. Get to know networking stacks, understand routing, networking, switching. If you're not a network engineer, it's still very important to understand all of the networking concepts. You don't have to actually understand or be able to configure a switch, for example, but it's important to know the difference between routing and switching and security and understanding what stretched networks are, for example, or what a gateway is, or where a gateway lives, or how you can set up a hub and spoke network. It's very important to understand that thing so that you can grow in your own area by understanding what's going on in other areas. So I'll give you an example. I always knew a bit more about networking than the other infrastructure engineers in my field. And that's because I actually spent the time to learn networking. I had a genuine interest in networking since I was a little kid. I probably did a few networking courses and almost actually wanted to become a network engineer. I think I even did a failed attempt at a CCNA certificate, but I didn't really end up going down that path, but it still taught me a lot of things that I still use today, even in my role as a cloud consultant. Don't forget that most organizations now still have a presence on-prem. So they need to go from on-prem to cloud. And the only way you can do that is via networking. My third tip is to find your niche, or niche as some would say. Find the tech stack that you get lost in. So find the one tech stack that you fall in love with. Is it Azure? Is it AWS? Is it VMware? Is it Cisco? Is it just general networking? Is it cybersecurity? Find your passion within the IT field. Find your niche. You need to be able to sit there and lose track of time when you're doing something. So, for example, on a weekend, I might sit there and go, okay, I want to build a hub and spoke network in Azure, or I want to build my customer's environment in a VMware lab so that I can replicate an issue that they're having. These are the type of things that I see the very successful engineers and the very successful consultants doing, because they're spending their own time to enrich their experience. Find your passion in the field. IT is huge, and you can make a living in IT doing many different things. You can be a VMware professional, you can be an Azure professional, you can be an AWS professional, but you have to find that area that you love so much that when you do it, you just get lost in it. You think of it this way: you need to be able to find something that you would do even if you weren't paid. So if I wasn't getting paid for it and I was just bored on a weekend, I might go and build something just out of interest. Like I might go and I've been actually thinking now that I want to build a facial recognition system in Azure. So something where my CCTV cameras will take a photo of something coming into my garage, send it to Azure and use their algorithm or their services to sort of understand what it is and label it and send me an email. That's the type of thing that I see the genuine, passionate IT people doing in their spare time. Tip number 4 is to entrench yourself in your clients. One thing that I really see a lot of in the IT field is IT engineers or system engineers or any sort of IT professional not really understanding their client's business. In one of my first roles in IT, the company that I was working for was a massive mortgage broker in Australia. One thing that they did very well, so they were outsourcing to us, I was working at a managed service provider. One thing that they did very well was help the engineers understand their business. So helping the engineers understand the broker's business. So what does it actually mean when one of their brokers can't access a system? What does it actually mean when one of the services is down? And when I say what does it mean, not as in what does it mean, oh the server is down, or the server is experiencing latency. No, what I actually mean is what does it mean as a business impact? So every minute that service is down is costing the actual broker valuable time with someone. So they're sitting with someone, they're trying to get a mortgage application up to date, or they're trying to fill in all the application details, but the application isn't working, or the application they're using isn't working. That's the actual cost to the business. That's where you start losing money. So that's something I think that IT professionals really need to understand better. Stop looking at things from an engineer's perspective. Look at issues, problems, and solutions from an operational or a business perspective. So try and think of it how the CIO or the CEO or the COO is looking at it. That sort of helps engineers take their blinkers off and understand more about what the business impact is, rather than just, oh, this server is down, I need to fix it, it's a P1, blah, blah, blah. You need to sort of think deeper. If you don't start thinking deeper, you're just not going to get where you want to be. My fifth tip, and this may be unpopular with a lot of viewers, is to work in a managed services provider. This is my opinion. I wholeheartedly believe that a good engineer needs to do some time at an MSP. Reason being that MSPs give you a lot of exposure to a lot of different tech stacks, especially if you are still trying to understand what your niche is and what your passion is. You really need to work in an MSP so that you get lots of different experience in lots of different tech stacks, and you can make a decision much easier. Being on multiple clients, I think, gives you a lot more exposure than working in an internal environment. In a big internal environment, you may have a lot of different tech stacks, but usually you have a lot more red tape as well. So you can't work on networking kit, you can't work in Azure because you're an AWS guy, or you can't work in AWS because you're an Azure guy. This is the type of red tape that I always used to see in internal environments or in certain teams. Working at an MSP gets you a lot more exposure. I remember when I worked at multiple different MSPs, if I wanted to work on something, I would just speak to whoever I needed to speak to start working on it. And usually I would. And that's how I ended up in Azure. So I saw that there was a client coming on, and they were very early adopters of Azure. They were early adopters of Microsoft 365, and they were early adopters of Citrix Cloud. I saw that and I was like, this is an opportunity for me to really build on my niche. And I did. And I became fully entrenched in that client via the MSP. And wherever I go now, I always have that experience because I worked on multiple different stacks. My sixth tip is do not stop. Once you land a good job, do not stop. This is something that I see all the time in IT. All I see is people sitting there in their cushy jobs as a system engineer getting paid a decent wage, but all they do is the same thing every day. They wake up in the morning, they check the alerting, they check their emails, they look for anything, or they run their scripts, and they're proud of themselves. They've built some scripts so that it makes their morning go very easy, and which is great. But my suggestion is don't get comfortable. Give yourself challenges. If you've written scripts to automate your job, great. Find something else to automate. Find new problems in the environment. Look for problems in the environment, in your customer's environment. Look for solutions to those problems. All I can say is give yourself challenges so that you can better yourself by bettering the company you're working for or the client that you're working for. My seventh tip is to automate. When I first came into IT, one of the first things that I learned was PowerShell. PowerShell, I think, taught me a lot about business improvement in general, because I was able to automate a lot of things that we used to do in our day-to-day jobs. I was able to do it in PowerShell. And the MSP managers loved me, the clients loved me, my teams loved me. All I was doing was looking for things that people are doing repetitively, like everyday user administration. We had one company who would, like, every month they would get 50 new users, and before I came into the company, the organization would sit there creating 50 new users manually in Active Directory. So this was about 10 years ago. I wrote a PowerShell script that would ingest that Excel file and create the users all automatically. And that was something that I still know that they are using today. So I think there's a lot of value in learning automation. My eighth tip is a tricky one. It's to be the authority on something. So being around lots of managed services providers, I noticed that there was always one or maybe maximum two people that would be the authority on a certain tech stack in a certain environment. So for example, if we were thinking about networking, if we were thinking about doing an express route, right, from an on-premises environment to Azure, there was always like one person or two people that knew the most about express route. Any question that you would have, they would be able to answer that question. That person becomes the authority on a certain subject, so they really own that tech. They know the most about that tech compared to the people around them. They may not necessarily know the most in the world, but they definitely know the most in the environment around them. So that when you become that person of authority on a certain tech stack, you'll notice that people start coming to you and people start really respecting what you say, and that builds your confidence and the confidence of the people around you, because they know that they have you to rely on. So one thing that I really strongly believe is that when you become the authority on something, and let's say you have a team of 5 people and you're the authority on Azure Express routes, your whole team will be able to really improve themselves based on your knowledge. And they really see that you are, the main thing is that you don't be the one that they go to and you just actually do the task. That's just lazy. So what you need to do is get into this situation where people come up to you, they ask you questions about Azure Express Route, for example, and you lead them to the answer, but without actually giving them the answer, without doing the task for them. To wrap up, tip number 8, because I know I went off track a bit, is to learn something so well that there is no way someone around you knows more than that. And pick something like Azure Express Route, for example. That's a bad example because I used it about 100 times, but maybe be the VMware guy, be the guy that's the best authority on VMware in your managed service provider company. So that wraps up my 8 tips to make money in IT, or to better yourself in IT. Hope that you guys found that somewhat useful. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section below. Otherwise, please like and subscribe the video for more. See you next time.